Welcome to the Go Beyond Disruption podcast, brought to you by the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. Exclusive weekly conversations about how emerging tech is changing accounting, business, and finance. Now more than ever, we all must think differently about what we do and how we do it. Being bolder, breaking convention, going beyond the old comfort zones. It's Women's History Month, so all March, we'll hear exclusively from female guest experts who've done just that. Women from around the world who are impressively ahead of the curve, leading innovation in everything from blockchain to robotic process automation, artificial intelligence to human intelligence, and data analytics to cybersecurity. Subscribe to this podcast for free, and together, we'll go beyond disruption.
Welcome to the Go Beyond Disruption podcast. Today, I'm talking with CPA Lauren Baptiste, who's also the CEO and creative founder of Acheloa Wellness. She's calling us from New York, and I'm Jennifer Gardner. I'll be talking with her from Durham, North Carolina. Lauren, you worked at a Big Four accounting firm before starting your business. So what inspired you to found your company?
I was inspired to start my company because I noticed a pattern at working at a Big Four. I noticed across the service lines that I had been in as a CPA that individuals, and specifically women, are suffering from stress and burnout. So even when I started about 10 years ago, it wasn't really termed burnout. I think that's almost a new term that we've coined. But what I saw was individuals suffering from diabetes, adult acne, low libido, etc. And I felt really drawn to serve these individuals, these women, in this special way.
So what was it about the environment that was creating these kind of stressors for these individuals?
I think it becomes this snowball effect of when things are good, we're good. And then when things are not good, it can become bad. So it starts with busy season, working, they say minimum 55-hour weeks, but usually more like 70+ hour weeks, which means little sleep, which means not eating great, which means not taking care of ourselves or nourishing ourselves, our bodies, our relationships the way we need to. So it becomes this monster of a problem. And then what happens is busy season now doesn't extend just for the 2 months. It becomes this almost year-round vicious cycle.
Wow. And we know that sleep is so foundational to our health and well-being.
Absolutely.
And also to our productivity. So Lauren, what does Acheloa mean, and why did you choose this name for your business?
Acheloa is a Greek goddess who focuses on women's health, specifically their menstrual cycles and stress. So as I was picking a name for my business, it just called to me. I was like, oh, I must be a reincarnation of this goddess. And so from there, I was very called to call my business Acheloa Wellness. I'm
surprised they had stress back in those days. I guess the stress was that you might be eaten by,
a lion,
kind of giant animal.
It's funny that you mentioned that, actually, because they're really for women, especially, and for men too. But in the lens of women, there are two types of there's stress. There are two types of hormones. There's stress hormones, and then there's the feminine sex hormones, just like the gender side. And when our stress is so high, which I equate to, imagine being chased by a lion, then you're not really able to procreate. You're not able to tap into that feminine side. So for us, we're not really chased by lions anymore, luckily, but we might be nudged on the subway or told something nasty by a coworker, and all of a sudden, our stress is high.
Mm-hmm. And we really haven't evolved beyond that sort of fight or flight response.
And even worse is there's a statistic that says one stressful event that's not even a traumatic event, just a stressor, can last up to 22 hours in the body. So that being said, imagine over and over and over and over again during a busy season, during that period of work where stressors are just high, you're really never able to reduce that cortisol, those high stress energies that are in the body at that time, which is when the health starts to take a dip.
And is it just the stressors of work life, or what about what happens in our private lives with our families and our home lives?
Yeah, there's an impact there as well, absolutely. And especially as women, we put everyone and everything first before we put ourselves, which is such a beautiful thing in some ways, but in a lot of ways we're seeing that it's actually hurting us as professionals. It's hurting us as mothers, sisters, friends. We're not able to be there for one another. We turn into these mini robots for this period of time. Or what's worse is it's for this year-long cycle where you start to disconnect from who you really are.
So how did you decide to focus on women?
I had a personal incident when I was working at a Big Four, and I was in I'd say my third year, and it was kind of that perfect formula for failure. So I was working crazy hours. I had a team that was tough at the time, and we were stuck together too. We were in Minnesota working all day for these 14-hour days. We traveled together. We drove in the car together. We ate together, and it just felt overwhelming. And I thought, I can handle this. I'm good. But my body decided that it couldn't. So at that point, it actually, it broke out in head-to-toe hives in the middle of the office. And people just assumed it was something I ate. So they were like, okay, well, go to the hospital, bring your computer, and we'll talk tomorrow. And we went through the doctor gave me these medicines to try to reduce my allergies. And lo and behold, next day I go to work, my boss is like, well, where is everything I told you to work on?
Wow. It was chilling when you said, bring your computer to the ER.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I even sent an email around 2 a.m. that was like, just so you know, this is me getting out at 2 a.m. I wasn't very successful at doing anything because of my reaction to my skin, So then finally, of course, I'm at the office the following day, which happened to be Valentine's Day, and again, breaking out in head-to-toe hives. So I go back. Of course, I've never experienced hives in my life, and that's what made it weirder. It's not like I had a childhood thing. It was my body saying no more. So I went back to the hospital, and the doctor said, you can't leave here until you watch 2 hours of HGTV, and then we'll have a conversation. And lo and behold, the hives went away. My stress went down. That was the most expensive cable bill I ever experienced in my life. But then the doctor was like, so you're going through a burnout, a stress, and you need to figure out how to reduce it. So that was a real awakening for me as someone who was generally healthy. I was a collegiate athlete. I thought I ate well, but when busy season takes its turn, I ended up using Guinness as meal replacement shakes, just drinking to get my fill and to get what I needed to get through to the next day. So it wasn't sustainable. And I started to see my body falling apart. And that was the last straw before I said, it's time to do something about this.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful story. I love that kind of TV, and I don't have cable, so whenever I'm in a hotel, I want to watch HGTV.
I love it.
I've been watching the new show with Marie Kondo on Netflix, and I find it so relaxing.
Isn't it funny? It's we don't even have time to clean our own houses, but we find it comforting to watch someone else clean theirs.
Exactly. Well, it's that promise, right, of finding joy through tidying up that is so appealing. And I think it's also her spirit that really speaks to me.
Absolutely. And I think there's so much to it, right? But really, the other and more important side is this idea of sparking joy. It's this question that so many people don't really even understand. And you see it through the clients that she works with, of what does that mean to get that feeling of bing, and that's a lot of the work I do. If we just keep working day in, day out and don't take a break, it feels we're just robots is the only word I can come to, because we start to lose that connection to who we really are and what really matters to us, which is the relationships, the passion, the family, the self-care, those things that actually have importance to our life.
And I think it's hard for women. I think we have so much work to do at home, many of us, especially if we have children. And I know for me, I often have to take time to say, you know what, those tasks, those chores can wait. And that it's more important that I take time to read a book or watch my HGTV.
It is. And it's funny because we think of things so linearly. I need to clean the house and I have this big to-do list that never, ever ends. And then we think of watching TV or reading a book as almost naughty, because we're there's so many other things. So it almost attributes more stress to something that's supposed to be reducing stress. And that's where I really, when I'm working with individuals or clients and I'm telling them, really feel from the heart and try to start living your life from your heart. Imagine if your eyes were actually at like the heart level instead, and instead of being so focused on, every little thing, focus on how does this make me feel? And is it actually sparking that type of joy and that happiness that I truly seek?
We talked a little bit about how stress is different for women in terms of the environment, but what about physically? How do women react? Is it the same as men? Is it different from men?
It's different. So, and I will say, of course, every person and their reaction to stress is different, but overall, just what I've seen from studies and research, it's different. Women kind of swallow the pill of stress, where men spit it out. If you would think, maybe there's a little bit more aggression, a little bit more, right? Like that's how kind of stress might come out for men. For women, it's like they're taking the pill internally and it's eating them up. And a lot of the work I do, it starts with this lens of health. And even you'll notice during busy season, the body starts to change. And there might be little things like all of a sudden just burping more or constipation or these little things that you don't think anything of from like, especially like a Western medicine side. From an Eastern medicine side, that's actually the first stage of a disease. And actually step 4 is where Western medicine comes in and meets and says, okay, you have, XYZ ailment or hives even, but it starts with this like dehydration, not taking care of ourselves, even seeing the skin starting to flake. It's like, it's telling us we need something that we're lacking. And it's not just physical. What we'll see is also the effect on the emotive state. So if, for example, maybe you're experiencing dry skin, or you might also be experiencing flakiness in your attitude or your behavior, or you may be forgetful, or you may all of a sudden start to have a conversation with somebody and then just like turn around and talk to someone else, or get distracted and go from conversation to email, and then you really don't get through anything. So I don't know if you ever notice this when you're busy. It's like you kind of just scatter all over the place. But if we're not in balance of those shifts, then it starts to grow into something that we don't want in our bodies.
Sure. In fact, this morning I was doing exactly that. I was not able to really focus because I had so much to do. And I instead took a look at my calendar and said, what's really important? What do I have to get done before the end of this week? And what meetings can I move? Because I knew that I wasn't going to be successful with the way that the remaining days of the week were set up.
Absolutely. And it's starting to really have those boundaries. And that's another thing I experienced that I want to be an advocate of, in the big 4, in a mid-tier, in a small firm, of really building your boundaries, especially as women. I think we just assume that we have to say yes to everything, that we have to do everything right and do it perfectly, especially the type A's, the CPAs. Like, I know that, I feel that, I am that. So I understand that completely, but it's starting to learn and feel into progress instead of perfection. Of course, when it's a work paper and you need to reconcile an amount, it needs to be perfect. But it also, if you know that you need an extra hour for it to be right, then ask for that extra hour. Don't just push through and then all of a sudden sacrifice your lunch, sacrifice your sleep, right? Because that actually has a bigger impact and risk than it will if you actually just ask for what you need.
Are you ready for disruption? Join us in Chicago, Illinois, April 24th through 26th at the AICPA CFO Conference to find out. The CFO Conference keeps you at the cutting edge of the financial industry with 22 sessions developed for CFOs by CFOs, 33 subject matter experts, and 2 professional networking sessions. It's the one event of the year specifically designed to prepare you for disruption and provide you with the opportunities to advance your career and make your mark in the C-suite world. Get $75 off when you register before March 12th and use promo code CFO19 for an extra $75 off for a total savings of $150. But don't worry, if you're hearing this podcast after March 12th, you can still use promo code CFO19. And if you can't attend the CFO conference in person, you can still join us online so you don't miss out, with all of our exclusive sessions streamed live in real time straight to your computer or mobile device. You'll also have access to remote networking, chat rooms, handouts, and slides, just as if you were there with us on site. Register today at aicpastore.com/CFO
and we'll look forward to seeing you at the 2019 CFO Conference.
Well, this is a good segue into my next question. So how does this amount of stress impact companies in terms of productivity and also the bottom line? What's the cost of losing an employee, and how does high turnover rate impact your business?
The amazing part is there's so much now out there that we understand that this is a problem. So there's a lot of investment in research to figure out the true cost. Even in stress alone, they say the cost of stress in the industry, just in the United States alone, and this isn't just finance, this is like just in companies all over, is $300 billion each year.
Wow.
So that's a lot of money that's left on the table because people are stressed out. So if you think about it on a macro scale, yeah, that's a problem, right? And if you equate it divided by the people, they say it comes out to about, I think, 2,000 at least per person, again, which is a lot of money per person. If you could take that money and invest in their wellness or something else, not only is it becoming something that makes them feel better, but again, it's money that's being saved. Maybe you only spend half on the wellness, but then you still save half, then it's win-win. What we see is, especially by addressing burnout, we can get women to stay to leadership levels. What we see is this kind of middle management, upper management, maybe that's your manager, senior manager level, starting to leave, because as those big milestones happen in our lives, then that question of, can I do this all? Can I balance it? Is this worth it? All starts to come to mind. And just to answer your question, they say, so at that manager level, that 100K level, whatever approximately that is, the cost of replacing that person is actually over $213,000.
Wow. That's a huge number.
It's a big number, right? And I think the reason why it's also so big, and a lot of studies are like, oh, it's a lot lower, but the reason why it's so big, especially for, say, manager and up, is because over time, those skills are really hard to just take from somewhere else. Usually the pool, because it gets smaller at that level, then you're trying to replace it with somebody who's equally as good, or maybe someone who's burnt out at another firm. It's just kind of transactional, changing for change. But instead, if, again, this is like a huge pool of money that we're potentially losing that can be used. Another way to think about it too is those managers had 5 years of experience. What's the cost of, say, those 5 years to get them to where they are now? A manager is very different than a staff, both incredibly important and have their value. But just to know, the higher it gets, the more expensive it is to replace them.
So why is it important that we support women in particular?
So women in particular, and I love guys too, so I always like to say, I always have to explain that. Like, I appreciate men, like men are amazing, they have a place, right? For women, it's so important that we're supporting the growth there, because what we're seeing is in the next few decades, our baby boomers are retiring, and there's going to be a lot of open slots that need to be filled. And if we're not bringing our women into these roles, then it's like, imagine bringing only like half of your team to the game, to the Super Bowl or something, right? It's like, why wouldn't you bring 100% of your players to the game? So we have to think about it like that way. But also there's research to show women at the top are actually creating and embracing and making businesses that are thriving. Revenues are higher, turnovers are lower. It's just the numbers are there to show that the more women that are there, you just see it. And then on a micro level, you see it as a younger woman. If you're looking up and you don't see any women in leadership, oh, maybe this isn't the company for me. So this is where the problem is, that we still don't have enough women in those leadership roles. But of course, the younger women can't see it. So it's like there's time that has to elapse to get the women there. But what we really have to do is address those middle and upper management women to not leave, to support them in their growth so they feel fulfilled in all the areas of their life, not just the career.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think, you talked a little bit about how women leaders are different from men leaders. And we hear a lot about the gender gap. I know that that's been getting a lot of attention lately. And it seems like there's a long way we have to go to close the gap. But what are some of the things that you see being done, especially in the accounting industry, to help close that gap?
I'd love to say that there are strides being made, which is exciting. Of course, I would say there's still a lot more that need to be done. It's on the individual level, helping give the support to these women to build the confidence, to have the space that they need to be their best selves, to give them the resources, to give them those soft skill tools. And I think some may say that's overrated at this point, but I don't. If we're doing it the right way, we need to really focus and spend more time using our women's groups to really continue the development outside of just networking alone. From a corporate level, continuing to invest in women in these types of programs and understanding what the needs are. And I think, again, there are strides you're seeing in the accounting firms with the 4 months leave for maternity, which is amazing, but also really bridging that gap of when these women are coming back, of how they don't just get slammed with the work that they left with 4 months ago. So a real transition process. And even for the women who aren't mothers, giving them the opportunity to go on dates, right? It sounds, what happens is there's women that are their moms and their wives, let them be. And then the single women are just kind of singled out. And I think what's important is space and time is space and time. So if a woman needs to go to the gym, let her do that. If she needs to go on a date, let her do that. Whatever it needs to be. The beauty of the accounting world is the flexibility, but we really need to flex it. We need to know when we need to be more on the work side of the pendulum and where we need to be more on the personal self-care side, because without that swing back and forth, it just is not going to work.
I really like that you pointed out that we need to be looking out for single women as well as moms and wives. I happen to manage 2 millennial single women, and I'm very mindful of the fact that they have priorities in their lives that are just as important as mine with my kids.
I love it.
So what is your solution to some of these problems that women are facing with stress?
Yeah, some of the solutions that I've started to build in my firm have been cultivating is really an understanding of, in each organization, first of all, where the problem lies, because each organization has different needs. So what I'm saying or what I've been sharing are generalizations based off research, based off of my experience, but every company has a different thing that they're working through, right? The female millennials are different than baby boomer millennial females. So it's really just understanding what the needs are and then building a custom solution for them. So what happens is, which I think is great, but this is where it can move from a B+ to an A, is I think that a lot of the programs in companies are just saying, well, let's put a woman in charge to figure it out, or let's just pull together this program. But I think what you need is kind of an expert in the area who can help complement what you have going. So build a real strategy. So it's not just for the short-term growth, but focusing on the long-term of let's get more female partners. Let's focus on building a larger female workforce at that middle level.
So we can't really just have an app or some technology that's going to fix it, it sounds like, or put a Band-Aid on it with a special group.
I'm stuck the Band-Aid. I feel like we need to get to root cause, right? Even when I work with individuals one-on-one, it's really understanding root cause, not just putting a cream on my hives and, still continuing to move through the Guinness, right? It's understanding from a holistic level, how is everything not just affecting my body physically, my mental capacity, and beyond. And then from a company, it's understanding not just women, but how can we bring men into the conversation? How can we make this a grassroots approach and a top-down approach simultaneously, so everyone just feels that love and no one feels that exclusion. So it's a lot of hands at play. It's a lot of community that's needed to be bridged, and it's a lot of hope and care as opposed to competition and cutthroatness. And that's really where I see the future of how this is all starting to come about and what's going to happen next.
It sounds pretty exciting. I like the idea of finding some solutions to some of these challenges, both individually and as a larger organization. And so when you work with people, how do you get started? So if say you were coaching me, what would you have me do to get started and start moving in a healthier direction?
When I work with individuals, and I love both sides of the individual work and the organization work because I can do very different things. But from an individual level, we have a conversation and we talk about your menstrual cycle story. And we start there because there's so much to tell just based on what's happening throughout your month. how are your mood swings? How's your body? How's your PMS? What's your cycle like? How long does it last? What color is and it starts to give me a clue of what's happening. And if I feel any irregularities, I start to uncover those and understand those better. And then from there, there's other assessments and things I work on. And really it's addressing these problems one-on-one, but always from the lens of health first. I'm a huge believer of if you get your health right, then your mind's right. If your mind's right, then your head's in the right places. And then you can even connect a little bit deeper to the anti-robot in your heart, that deep connection and wantingness to be part of something big. And that's why we're all passionate women, part of these big fours, part of these mid-sized firms, part of this accounting world, because we want to make an impact. And this is one way to do it, but we have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves.
So really the message is start with your health.
Start with your health. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Lauren. This has been fascinating. I feel like I've learned a lot about why it's important to take care of ourselves and the roles that women play in our firms. And thank you so much for coming on our Go Beyond Disruption podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an honor. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to this special episode of Go Beyond Disruption, highlighting trailblazing women in the tech space and human intelligence. This podcast is brought to you by the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. For more information about today's topic, search for us online with keywords Go Beyond Disruption. Feel free to share your thoughts with us on social media using the hashtags Human Intelligence, Go Beyond Disruption, or AICPA Women Lead.
This podcast is designed to provide illustrative information with respect to the subject matter covered and does not represent an official opinion or position of the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. It is provided with the understanding that the association, its affiliates, and subsidiaries are not engaged in rendering legal, accounting, or other professional services. If such advice or expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional person should be sought. The association, its subsidiaries, and affiliates make no representations, warranties, or guarantees as to and assume no responsibility for the content or application of the material contained herein and expressly disclaim all liability for such damages arising out of the use of, reference to, or reliance on such material.